Hey everyone, it's MusicTechHelpGuy, and in this video, I want to show you 8 tips and tricks for speeding up your audio editing workflow in Logic Pro 10. So these will not be obvious things like memorizing your zoom shortcuts and memorizing your transport controls. I'm going to sort of assume that everyone knows their basic shortcuts. And in this video, I'll show you some interesting tips and tricks and custom key commands that are helpful for speeding up your audio editing workflow. All right, so let's get right into this. The first one is I want to show you how to access tools more quickly using click zones. So by default in Logic, your standard tools up here on the left, this is just your left click tool. So by default, this is your pointer tool. And then on the right, this is your command click tool. So you can use your left click on your mouse to select your main tool, and then you can hold command to access the secondary tool, the command click tool. But what if you want to use more than just 2 tools? Well, if you go up to Logic Pro, Preferences, General, and then from here, click on the Editing tab, there's an option here for Pointer Tool and Tracks Provides, Fade Tool Click Zones, Marquee Tool Click Zones, and there's also Quick Swipe and Take Editing click zones, but I'm not going to use that. So I'm just going to use the Fade and Marquee Tool click zones. So now what this does is when you hover over a region, on the top half of the region, you get your normal left click tool. So I got my pointer tool here. On the bottom half, this gives you the marquee tool. So anytime you have your pointer tool selected, you'll get your marquee tool on the bottom half of that region. Now, in addition to that, this gives you some options for fades. So let's just trim this up here. If you hover over the left or right side of a region, you can now add a fade without having to use any shortcuts or any key commands, or even use the fade tool. Now, there is a shortcut for creating fades. It's Shift Control. You can just drag from the inside of the region out to create a fade, but this is another way to just quickly create fades without having to use any other key commands. Number 2 is group editing. Sometimes you may want to edit multiple regions at the same time, and rather than having to drag over multiple regions and trim them all up together, just like so, or use your scissors tool or use your marquee tool on all of them all at once. You can use groups to just select one of these and edit all of them as a group. So the way I like to create groups is I just press X to pull up the mixer, find those channels in the mixer, select them, and right here there's a blank tab, a blank insert for the group option. So you click there and create a new group. So I'll just choose group 1, new. Then on the left, the groups dialog will pop up here, and you can give the group a name. So I'll just call this drums edit. So I've selected all my drum tracks. And there's different options for groups here. Some of these are like mix controls, things like muting, volume, automation. I'm just going to select editing and nothing else. And now, if I trim one of these regions, it trims them all. If I move one of them, it moves them all. If I use the marquee tool on one of them, it edits them all. If I split one of them with the scissors tool, it splits them all. Likewise, if I add fades, it adds fades to all of them. So group editing is really helpful when you're dealing with multi-track material like multi-track drums or maybe stacked vocals or a stacked beat with multiple samples and loops thrown in there. But there's a couple other options here for group editing that some people are not aware of. Let's say that I have multiple different groups. For example, let's say that I have my vocals in a group and my guitar and bass in a group here. So what I'll do is I'll create a second group for these 2 channels, and then I'll create a third group for these 2 channels. So I've got 3 different groups now, group 1, 2, 3. If you go up to Logic Pro 10 Key Commands Edit, or press Option K, and search up group, you'll see this option here that says select members of group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, on and on and on. What you can do is you can create shortcuts for the first 2 or the first 3 groups, and then you can access these pretty easily you can select all members of a group without having to select them with the mouse. So I'll select this option, select members of group 1. I'll click Learn by Key Position, and a good shortcut for this is option 1. And then I can click on the next one, option 2, option 3, and I can keep going if I want, but rarely do I have more than 2 or 3 groups in a project, so I'll just stop at 3. And now I can press option 1 to select all of the tracks in group 1, option 2 to select all of the groups or all of the tracks in group 2, option 3 to select all of the tracks in group 3. And now I can quickly make adjustments to these, mix adjustments if I want, even if it's not in a mix group, or maybe the volume is not part of the group. You can quickly select that group and make a volume change to all of those. One last key command that's helpful with groups is you can press Shift G, and what Shift G will do is it disables your groups. Press Shift G, this disables and enables this option. So if you need to temporarily disable all of your groups, just press Shift G, make whatever individual editing adjustments you need to make, then press Shift G again to activate all of the groups, and you can go back to group editing again. Tip number 3 is I'm going to show you how to edit and slice transients quicker than you're probably doing it right now. So if you work with loops a lot, you might be familiar with chopping up a loop and repurposing all of the samples in the loop. And you can drag and drop, loops directly into Quick Sampler and chop them up that way. But if you prefer to sort of manually chop them up and rearrange the samples, you can do this as well. So one way to work with transient heavy material like this percussion loop here is if you select that track and set the playhead somewhere, you can press Control period or comma, and what this does will jump the playhead forward or backward to snap to a transient. Now if I want to separate, say, like this sample right here, I can set the playhead to the beginning of the transient, press Command T to separate that, then press Control period to jump forward to the next transient, and then press Command T again. And this is a way to kind of quickly do it manually, but there's actually a much quicker way to sort of batch process these and get all of these samples out of this loop. A quicker way to do it would be to turn flex on that track. If it's percussion loop, it'll generally automatically select slicing. Then you can right click and choose slice at transient markers, and it'll chop up that loop into its individual slices. Then you can turn off flex and then hide flex, and then you're good to go, and you can start manually arranging these. Now, if you want to save yourself some additional mouse clicks, Command F will hide and show flex. Control F will turn on flex and follow for that track. But there's actually an even faster way to skip all of that. You don't have to use any of those key commands, and you can slice at transient markers with a single custom key command. So I'll just search up transient markers, slice at transient markers. So I'll learn by key position. Oh, let me try Shift Option Command T. There we go. Shift Option Command T. So now that I've created that custom key command to slice at transients, all you have to do is select the region, press that key command, Shift Option Command T for me, and it automatically chops everything up at transients. You don't even have to show flex or turn on flex and follow. It automatically will do it at the transients. So I find that incredibly helpful for chopping up loops and samples. Okay, so let's say you've got multiple regions that are cut up and edited together. They're adjacent to each other like this. And you want to be able to quickly crossfade them without having to use the fade tool. So yeah, you can use the fade tool, or you can use the drag X fade option. And then, if you overlap regions, it'll create crossfades. But there's a much quicker way to do this. If you select a bunch of different adjacent clips, all you have to do is press Control Option X. Control Option X, and you'll see it automatically creates crossfades for all of those adjacent joining points. Now, the default crossfade for this is 20 milliseconds. It's a 20 millisecond crossfade. Let me just zoom in here so we can see a couple of them. And if I undo this to get rid of them, let me show you how you can customize the length of that crossfade. You go up to Logic Pro 10, go down to Preferences, this time go to Audio, and go to the Editing tab. And you'll see here, crossfades for merge and take comping. Crossfade time, 20 milliseconds. So let's say you want a smaller fade, like 6 milliseconds. You can set that, and now when I press Control Option X, you'll see that it creates smaller fades. Likewise, I can make this larger. Same thing, Control Option X, we get larger fades. Let me keep it on larger fades just to demonstrate something, because you can actually adjust the curve positive or negative. I like to generally set my crossfade curve a little in the negative, because what this does is it creates a fade that's sort of skewed over to the left. And if you have any transient material in the right clip, usually where the transients are going to be, or at the beginning of the clip or the beginning of the region, if you have a fade that sort of skews more over to the left and is more open on the right, it can help preserve those front end transients. Now, if you're working with, say a 10 millisecond fade, it's probably not going to matter, not going to matter too much. But if you're doing a bunch of transient editing, like I just mentioned before, where you're chopping up loops and samples and then you try to fade them together, having this crossfade curve in the negative will really help out with preserving those transients. Now, another sort of bonus tip here is if you want to add batch fades to things, you can simply select everything in a track or a selection of regions. Click on them, go over to your region inspector over here. And in the region inspector, under More, you can add batch fade-ins, you can add batch fade-outs, and you can even create batch crossfades as well. So this is helpful because you can actually select multiple tracks worth of material and apply batch fades to everything. So that's another way to do it, but I find that Control Option X key command is really helpful, and it's surprisingly a key command that not a lot of people are aware of. All right, next up is an editing function in Logic called Remove Silence. This used to be called Strip Silence, and you can get to this by simply selecting a region and pressing Control X. This will pull up the Remove Silence dialog. And here what you can do is you can use this to remove silence or areas of very, very low amplitude. Things like background noise, maybe breaths in between phrases. Any sort of gap in a recording can be removed and cleaned out. You can adjust different parameters down here to adjust the threshold of the removal, the minimum time to accept as silence. You can set a pre-attack time. That's generally a good idea because you don't want things to sound really cut off. So you can pull that out a bit. And then also you can set a post-release time. And then you click OK. And you'll see that region's now been separated into multiple regions. This is particularly helpful if you're working with like multi-track drums and you want to get rid of the bleed in, say, the kick drum, like here. So if I press Control X, you'll see that it isolates all of those kick hits. I could even pull the threshold up a bit more, try to isolate these a bit more, maybe pull down the minimum time, pull down the pre-attack time. And one great thing here is there's an option to search for zero crossings. What this will do is it'll put the boundary of each of the regions at a zero crossing, so there's no weird pop or click at the front or end of each of the regions. So this is a really nifty way to go through and chop up drum tracks and get rid of bleed. So let's try it on the snare here. Yeah, we'll give the snare a bit more room. More like that. There we go. Another really helpful editing function for music arrangement is the ability to cut, copy, and insert whole sections of your song. Now, typically, for example, if I wanted to take, say, all of this material in between bars 41 and 57 here, and I wanted to copy these over to a different section in my song, I'd have to select all of them, click and drag, move them over. Things get a little bit wonky at the end there. So I just moved it over. Uh-oh, I forgot to hold Option to duplicate. Now I've got to go back and do this again. So it gets a little wonky that way. If you simply use the cut, copy, and insert functions, you can do this a lot quicker. So what you can do with this, let's say I want to take 41 through 57 and I want to paste them over here at the end. If you select that range with the locators up here, then go over to edit here, go down to cut insert time. You'll see there's a few different options over here. We have cut section between locators, which is control command X. The only problem with that, control command X, is that it moves everything over. Now that's great if you want to take a section out and move it elsewhere, and you want to shift everything over. That's totally fine. But what if I just want to copy it and paste it over? You'll notice there's a function for this, but you'll notice that there's no shortcut for it. So let's go into our custom key commands again, and let's search up copy. There we go. Copy section between locators global. Let's set a custom key command for this. Let's just try control command C. And there it is. So now I can set my locators, control command C. Means I've copied everything in between this whole section here. Now what I can do is just set the playhead where I want the new section to go, and I can press control command V to paste in that new section. Now the cool thing about this is, yeah, sure, I can paste it on the end, but I can paste it anywhere. Like if I want to paste it in between these two sections right here at measure 17, control command V, it pastes it in and shifts everything over. Now let's say that I want to repeat this section another time. Make a selection with the locators, and now press control command R. It'll repeat that whole section. So those are 4 really helpful key commands. Control command X to cut a selection, control command C if you set a custom key command to copy, control command V to paste, control command R to repeat. So this is incredibly helpful for song arrangement and copying and pasting whole sections of your song across the timeline. As just sort of like a bonus tip here, if you make a selection here and you press either U or command U, this will set the locators to that selection. So now I could press, control command X to pull out a section, control command R to repeat it. So that's just another quick way to make a selection rather than having to click and drag up here. Now, there is a difference between command U and U. If I select this region and I just press U, it will set the locators around that section to the nearest bar. Notice that it's all the way over on bar 9 here. If you press command U, it'll set the locator to the exact length of the selection. So that's why I said there's 2 different options, U and command U. Number 7, here's another one for arrangement, specifically if you are working with live loops. Let's say that you've built out an arrangement here in live loops, and you want to move your live loops scenes over into the tracks area and build an arrangement. Before I show you how to do that, there's 3 really important shortcuts I want to show you here. The first is option B. Option B will show you both the tracks area and live loops at the same time. Option L will just show you live loops, and option N will show you just the tracks area. So that's a really helpful key command to just be able to jump back and forth between live loops and your tracks area. So let's say that I want to build out an arrangement and I want to use scene 1, 3, 5, then 7, then 6. Well, there's a really helpful shortcut. If you select any scene in live loops, and then you press command and then the end key, like the end key that's just under the home key, it will insert that scene at the playhead over in the tracks area. Let me just zoom out a bit. So then maybe let me click on number 3, command N. And you don't even have to click on the scenes if you just use the arrow keys to toggle between these. Now I'll move over to 5, command end, go to 7, command end, maybe 2 times. Then I'll go back to 6, command N, then maybe 3, a couple times, then maybe 10. So it's real easy to build out an arrangement like this in the tracks area because, you might build a beat or build a composition in live loops, but you don't necessarily want to record the vocals in live loops. That's counterintuitive. Now, if you're working on a laptop and you don't have an end key, there's an alternate shortcut for this. Instead of pressing command N, you're going to press function command and then the right arrow key, and it'll do the same thing as pressing command end. Okay, so for my very last tip for this video, I want to show you how to customize your snap mode key commands. So snap modes allow you to snap things to the grid or maybe not snap them to the grid. So snap to the grid, to toggle this is Command G. Most people already know this. You can turn on your snap to grid or turn it off. So if I'm on snap to grid bar, when I grab a region and move it around, you'll see that it snaps to the bar line. If I press Command G to toggle this off, now I can freely edit this wherever I want it to go. And you can choose different options here. If I don't want to use bars, maybe I want to use beats. Now my edits will snap to quarter notes on the grid, beats on the grid. Or maybe I want to use divisions on the grid. So now I'm snapping to division lines on the grid. But if you use bar, beat, and division a lot and you're switching between them a lot, like I am, it's actually pretty helpful to create a custom key command for all three of these, as well as creating a custom key command to toggle between absolute and relative grid. So to do this, once again, you just go up into your key commands here under edit, and I'll just search up snap, and you'll see snap mode bar, beat, and division. So I'm going to set these to shift option 1 for bar, shift option 2 for beat, and shift option 3 for division. And I'm using 1, 2, and 3 because I like to use my number pad. I have a full-size keyboard with a number pad. You'll have to maybe find some other key commands if you're using a MacBook. And then the other one is absolute and relative grid. So let me search up absolute. Here's snap regions to absolute/relative value. This just toggles between those two modes. So for this one, I'll do shift option period. And that's because on the number pad, the period's right below 1, 2, and 3. So now really quickly, I can press Command G to turn on and off my snap. And then I can press shift option 1, 2, and 3 to very quickly switch between bar, beat, and division. I just press shift option period, and it'll switch between absolute, shift option period, it'll go down to relative. So if I want to move this by division, then maybe switch to beat, now I'm snapping by beats, shift option 1, now I'm snapping by bars. Let me turn this off, shift G, snap wherever I want on the grid. Now let's say I want to snap back to a bar line. I'm in relative grid, so things are moving by a bar. I'm not snapping to the bar. So I'll press shift option period. Now I can snap to the bar again. So that's a really helpful one if you use these different snap modes sequentially. And you'll see after you create the shortcut shows up right here for you to remember. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. Those are 8 tips and tricks to speed up your audio editing workflow. If you'd like to see me do another video like this for MIDI sequencing and MIDI editing, let me know in the comments below. Leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. As always, guys, thank you for the support, and thanks for watching.